The stage was set like a gladiator's arena, bright lights overhead. Cameras fixed on every twitch and tremor, the hum of anticipation rolling through the audience. It was a debate billed as fiery, unpredictable, and unforgettable. Got it up. Moment, it became something far more. Karoline Leavitt leaned forward, her voice sharp, her eyes narrowed with the calculation of someone who wanted to leave a scar. Then she struck. Go back to India. The words didn't just fall into the microphone, they detonated. A gasp tore through the hall like a crack of thunder. Some in the crowd shifted in their seats uncomfortable, while others froze in disbelief. Their expressions caught between outrage and shock. The insult didn't echo once. It echoed 1,000 times over as every smartphone in the room captured it, broadcasting her words across social media in real time. On Twitter, the clip played. On loop before the sentence had even finished leaving her lips, comment threads exploded. Hashtags emerged in seconds. Screens lit up in living rooms and dorm rooms across America as people whispered the words to themselves. Did she really just say that? The moderator's face stiffened, caught between professionalism and disbelief. The other candidates glanced nervously at Patel, wondering whether he would explode in anger or recoil in humiliation. For a moment, silence pressed down on the room, heavy and suffocating, as if the nation itself was holding its breath. Leavitt's smirk flickered, satisfied at the wound she thought she had inflicted. This was supposed to be the knockout moment. The line that trended, the attack that rattled. But beneath the blinding stage lights, Kash Patel sat still, his expression unshaken, his eyes steady, not with rage, not with despair, but with something else entirely. The cameras zoomed closer. The audience leaning in as if the next words would decide more than a debate, they would decide the story of the night. The narrative of who America truly is. In that suspended instant, the insult hung in the air, daring Patel to stumble. The silence was unbearable, the suspense unbearable. Viewers at home could feel their pulse rise, and then came the moment no one expected. Because Kash Patel was about to respond, but no one expected what Kash Patel would say next. To understand the gravity of that moment, you have to rewind the clock back to why this debate mattered so much in the first place. It wasn't just another stage, another night of rehearsed talking points. This was the clash America had been, waiting for a collision of two visions of the nation itself. On one side stood Karoline Leavitt, the firebrand who thrived on provocation. Her style was brash, unfiltered, made for sound bites that ricocheted across cable news. She had built her name by playing to outrage, by embracing controversy as fuel. To her supporters, she was fearless, a warrior willing to say what others wouldn't dare. To her critics, she was a class politician who confused cruelty with courage, arrogance with authenticity. On the other side sat Kash Patel, a man with no need for theatrics, because his life story spoke louder than any attack. Line ever could. The son of Indian immigrants, Patel had risen through the ranks of law and public service, serving in some of the highest offices of national security. His calm demeanor wasn't weakness. It was discipline, the product of years navigating crises, where every word could tip the balance of national interest. To his supporters, he represented the American dream itself. To his critics, he was too polished, too careful. A man who could be underestimated in the arena of spectacle, and yet the spectacle was exactly why America was watching. This wasn't just about policy. It was about culture, identity, and who gets to claim ownership of real America. Millions tuned in not just to hear about taxes or security, but to watch the subtext unfold. Immigrant versus insider. Dignity versus derision. Substance versus soundbite. The stakes couldn't have been higher. For Patel, this was about more than defending himself. It was about defending every family that had come to America in search of belonging. For Leavitt, it was about cementing her place as the unapologetic face of a movement that thrived on provocation. And so, when the debate began, the energy in the room crackled with tension. The moderators tried to steer questions toward policy, but the audience knew it was only a matter of time before the gloves came off. Leavitt's eyes darted toward Patel whenever he spoke, her impatience barely hidden. She was looking for the opening, the perfect moment to deliver the kind of line that would dominate headlines. Patel, meanwhile, answered with precision, his words deliberate, his tone measured. He spoke of service, of the Constitution, of the duty that binds public officials to something larger than themselves. Each answer was delivered like a carefully placed stone, building a foundation of calm authority. It was this contraster. Fire, his composure that pulled the nation to the edge of their seats. The tension wasn't just between two candidates, it was between two visions of America. One that used exclusion as a weapon, and one that embodied the resilience of belonging. Viewers knew it was coming. It's the moment when rhetoric would turn personal. The moment when the stakes would break through the surface and reveal themselves for what they truly were. Because under the brightest lights, on the stage where reputations were made and destroyed in a single breath, something was about to snap. And then, under the brightest lights, everything unraveled. Karoline Leavitt did not stumble onto the stage by accident. Her rise was as calculated as it was meteoric. Crafted in the age of viral politics, where provocation was the currency of relevance, she was young, ambitious, and unapologetically combative. A politician who understood that, in a world addicted to outrage, the loudest voice often drowned out the most thoughtful. From the beginning, she positioned herself as a disruptor. She relished the role of the underdog, battling the establishment, framing herself as a truth-teller who wasn't afraid to offend. To her supporters, that made her authentic, refreshing, in a sea of scripted talking points. At a cost, and for Leavitt, it often meant turning cruelty into spectacle. She had a talent for drawing headlines, but not always for the reasons she wanted. Early in her career, she leaned into sharp rhetoric that ignited controversy. Whether it was mocking political opponents in ways that blurred the line between critique and insult, or leaning into culture war language that alienated whole communities, her strategy was clear: attention at any price. To Leavitt, visibility was victory, and outrage was proof that she was winning. Each controversy seemed to fuel the next. A dismissive comment about marginalized groups would spark a firestorm. And instead of softening her tone, she doubled down. She thrived on the backlash, wearing criticism like a badge of honor. If the mainstream media condemned her, she used it to galvanize her base. If her opponents called her reckless, she spun it as courage. Every outrage cycle brought her more followers, more clicks, more notoriety. Her arrogance became part of her brand. On stage, she smirked when opponents spoke, rolled her eyes when moderators tried to rein her in. It wasn't just debate, it was theater. And she played the villain role to perfection. Her fans loved it, her critics loathed it, but everyone, it seemed, was watching. And yet, underneath the bravado was a dangerous truth. Her hunger for attention often outpaced her judgment. She believed every viral moment was a victory, even when it eroded her credibility outside her base. She mistook controversy for influence, mistook being talked about for being respected. Her past controversies painted the pattern clearly. There was the rally where she dismissed concerns of racism as political correctness run wild. Televised interview where she brushed aside immigrant struggles with a laugh that struck many as cruel. The podcast appearance where she hinted that patriotism belonged more to some Americans than others. Each moment chipped away at her broader appeal, but solidified her place as a lightning rod. This was the paradox of Karoline Leavitt. The more divisive she became, the more her supporters adored her hand, the more her detractors were convinced. She embodied the worst instincts of American politics. She wasn't just playing the game. She was setting the board on fire. By the time she took the debate stage against Kash Patel, her reputation preceded her. She was the fighter, the provocateur, the one who would say what everyone else was too afraid to say. She carried that identity proudly, her ambition burning so brightly that she seemed to crave the very moment when she could launch a line sharp enough to dominate the news cycle. But what she failed to see was how fragile that strategy really was. Every insult raised the stakes. Every cheap shot chipped away at the patience of those beyond her loyal base. Audiences might cheer for a jab, but they also remembered the cruelty behind it. And when arrogance becomes habit, blinds you to the moment when the stage lights shift and the performance backfires. That night, Leavitt believed she was seizing her chance to cement her legacy.
The crowd, the cameras, the anticipation.
Was the perfect storm. And with one insult, she reached for the kind of notoriety she had always craved. What she didn't realize was that her greatest weapon, her hunger for applause, was also her greatest vulnerability. Because once the words left her lips, there would be no taking them back, and her hunger for applause would soon become her greatest undoing. Long before the bright lights of the debate stage, Kash Patel's story began in the quiet perseverance of an immigrant household. His parents came to America with little more than hope stitched into their suitcases. They worked long hours, their hands roughened by labor, their backs bent by sacrifice, believing that every hardship endured was an investment in the future of their children. For them, America was not an entitlement. It was a promise, one they intended to keep alive through discipline, resilience, and faith in something larger than themselves. Kash grew up watching this example every single day. His mother leaving for work before sunrise, his father coming home late but still asking his children about their studies. It was an unspoken lesson. Dignity wasn't in the words you boasted, but in the work you carried, the sacrifices you made quietly for those you loved. In that household, humility was strength, and gratitude was non-negotiable. From an early age, Patel stood out not because he sought the spotlight, but because he listened more than he spoke. Teachers remembered him as sharp, inquisitive, and disciplined, a student who respected the power of words but never wasted them. Education became his gateway not just to opportunity, but to service. He earned his law degree, not to chase wealth, but to wield justice in the service of others. His career began in the courtroom, defending the rule of law, building a reputation for precision and integrity. But Patel's ambitions were never about personal gain. His compass was public service, and soon his path led to some of the most critical corridors of power in Washington. He served on Capitol Hill, advised congressional committees, and eventually stepped into the national spotlight as a senior government official, even rising to the role of Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense. What's a position that carried not just influence but immense responsibility, the kind that tested judgment under pressure, the kind where every decision could ripple across the world. In those halls, Patel learned what it meant to remain calm under fire. National security crises demanded clarity, not panic. Political storms required patience, not rage. He carried himself with the steadiness of someone who understood that true strength wasn't loud, it was measured. He didn't need to shout to command attention. He let the facts, the strategy, the quiet confidence of a man anchored in values do the work for him. Patriotism for Patel was never performative. It wasn't about flag-waving slogans or chest-thumping declarations. It was about service, a kind that demanded sacrifice, long nights, and the weight of decisions few others could comprehend. His love for America was not born of convenience, but of choice. His family had chosen this nation, and he had chosen to give back by protecting it. That love carried him through challenges others might have found unbearable. Political opponents underestimated him, critics mischaracterized him, and commentators tried to box him in with labels. Yet he never lashed out in bitterness. He understood something fundamental. Dignity wasn't just how you carried yourself when you were praised, but how you carried yourself when you were attacked. By the time Patel stepped onto the debate stage across from Karoline Leavitt, his story had already written itself as a testament to perseverance and principle. He wasn't simply an immigrant success story, as pundits often reduced him to. He was an American success story. Period. Someone who had taken every ounce of sacrifice his parents made and turned it into service that reached the highest levels of government. And this is what made his presence so powerful that night. Wasn't a man looking to prove himself. He'd already proven himself in courtrooms, in the Pentagon, in moments where the stakes were measured not in applause, but in lives. He had faced decisions where hesitation could mean catastrophe. Compared to those battles, a televised debate was child's play. Yet what made Patel formidable was not just his resume, it was his calm, his refusal to be rattled. the way he embodied values that transcended partisanship, dignity, respect. On stage, he didn't need to play to the crowd, because he carried with him something more enduring than applause. The quiet strength of a man who knew who he was, where he came from, and why he served. This was not a man who needed validation from Karoline Leavitt or from anyone else on that stage. His validation came from the immigrant parents who sacrificed everything to give him a chance, from the Constitution he had sworn to defend, from the countless Americans who believed that service, not spectacle, defined the true measure of leadership. And that night, when the insult came, those values were tested in front of the nation. But Patel was not a stranger to tests. He had faced far greater trials in far more consequential arenas than anything a debate opponent could throw at him. This was a man who had already fought battles far tougher than a debate stage, and that was precisely why, when the moment of truth arrived, Kash Patel's response would not just answer an insult, it would shake the conscience of a nation. The debate began as so many others had, structured, policy-driven, the kind of exchange that gave the illusion of order even as tensions simmered beneath the surface. The moderator asked pointed questions about immigration reform, national security, and the future of American identity. Kash Patel answered with the composure of a seasoned professional, carefully laying out facts, measured in his tone, steady in his delivery. Karoline Leavitt, by contrast, played to the spectacle, her voice sharp, her gestures exaggerated, her gaze darting between Patel and the cameras, always calculating which moment might trend. At first, their exchanges remained within the bounds of political discourse. Patel spoke about the need for secure borders balanced with dignity for immigrants. Leavitt countered with sweeping statements about protecting real Americans. Patel reminded the audience of the sacrifices immigrants made for the nation's prosperity. Leavitt dismissed it as romanticized storytelling. The rhythm of the back and forth began to shift. What started as a clash of policies soon turned into a duel of personalities. Leavitt smirked as Patel spoke, rolling her eyes as if every word was beneath her. The cameras caught her subtle sneers, amplifying them on split-screen broadcasts. Patel remained calm, but the audience could feel the temperature in the room rising. When Patel cited his years in national security and law, reminding viewers that service to America had no expiration date, Leavitt seized the moment. "Spare us the resume," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "The American people want leaders, not lawyers hiding behind technicalities." Her supporters in the crowd clapped, but the applause was scattered. Not overwhelming. Patel leaned forward slightly, not rattled, but resolute. "The American people also want honesty, respect, and leaders who understand what this country truly stands for." Oh. His words landed evenly, almost softly. Yet the steadiness carried more weight than any shout could. Leavitt's smile faltered. For a beat, the tension between them sharpened, the debate shifting from substance to spectacle. The audience murmured, sensing the confrontation was building toward something volatile. The cameras tightened, catching every twitch, every flicker of emotion. Then came the moment where civility cracked. Leavitt's voice rose, her eyes narrowing as though daring Patel to flinch. "People like you," she began, stressing the words. "Come here. Talk about America as if you understand it better than those of us who were born here. But you don't. You'll never get it." A wave of discomfort moved through the audience. Patel's expression didn't change, but the room's energy did. The moderator shifted uneasily, sensing the line between debate and personal attack had been crossed. Still, Leavitt wasn't finished. She leaned closer to the microphone, eyes locked on Patel with an expression that was less debate partner, more adversary. "Why don't you," she said with deliberate venom, "go back to India?" The words cracked like lightning across the room. The air was sucked out of the hall in an instant. Gasps erupted from the audience, sharp, audible, visceral. Some clutched their chests, others shook their heads in disbelief. The cameras froze on Patel's face, searching for a reaction, then cut to Leavitt, who wore a triumphant smirk as if she had delivered the blow that would define the night. But what followed wasn't applause. It wasn't laughter. It wasn't even argument. It was silence. Thick, suffocating silence. The crowd that had been murmuring moments before sat in stunned stillness. The moderator's lips parted, searching for words but finding none. Even Leavitt's smile seemed to falter. As she looked out and saw the reaction, or rather the lack of one, the room froze. For a moment, time itself stopped. Every viewer at home, every audience member in that hall, every social media user replaying the clip already knew this was no longer about politics. It was about something deeper, something that touched the heart of who belonged, who was respected, who had the right to stand on that stage as an American. And in that unbearable silence, all eyes turned to Kash Patel. What would he do? Would he lash out in anger? Would he retreat into silence? Would he meet venom with venom? The nation held its breath waiting, because Patel's next words would decide everything. The silence stretched across the hall like a taut string, threatening to snap at any second. Kash Patel didn't flinch. He didn't fire back instantly, didn't raise his voice to match the venom hurled at him. Instead, he let the weight of the insult hang in the air, a silence so thick it became louder than any applause or jeer could ever be. His eyes swept the room, steady and unshaken, as though he were inviting the audience itself to wrestle with what had just been said. He leaned slightly toward the microphone, his voice calm, steady, and deliberate, softer than Leavitt's shrillness, yet somehow carrying farther. "My parents did come here from India," Patel began, his tone measured, each word deliberate. "They came with nothing. No money, no connections. Just a belief in this country so strong they were willing to work day and night for a future they might never see for themselves, but one they prayed their children would inherit." A hush washed over the audience. The insult was already fading. Overtaken by the quiet power of Patel's truth, he paused, letting the words breathe, letting the crowd lean in. "I watched my father leave for work before sunrise, and I watched my mother come home long after dark. They never complained. They never asked for recognition. Taught me dignity through sacrifice. Taught me love for a country that gave us a chance." Gasps softened into nods, murmurs of agreement rippling through the crowd. Patel wasn't arguing anymore. He was testifying. "And because of them, because of America, I was able to go to college. I was able to study law. I was able to serve not just in a courtroom, but in the halls of Congress. I was able to walk into the Pentagon and work to protect the very freedoms that allow us to stand here tonight and debate." Leavitt shifted in her seat, the smirk that once seemed carved into her expression now flickering with unease. The cameras caught it. The audience noticed it. For the first time all evening, she was no longer in control of the stage. Patel didn't look at her. He didn't need to. His words weren't for her. They were for America. This country is not made great by one race, or one group, or one generation. It is made great by the millions of people born here or who came here, who give their sweat, their labor, their loyalty to the promise of freedom. Applause broke out, tentative at first, then swelling. The sound filled the hall, echoing with a force that seemed to drown out the ugliness of what had been said minutes earlier. But Patel lifted a hand gently, signaling for calm. He wasn't finished. "And let me say this clearly," he continued, his voice still calm, but carrying an unmistakable edge of steel. "I am proud of where my family came from. I am proud of the sacrifices they made, and I am proud to be an American. Not because of where my parents were born, but because of what we have given back to this country we all call home." The crowd erupted again, louder this time, people on their feet. Leavitt's eyes darted toward the cameras as if searching for a lifeline, but the story had already slipped from her grasp. The split screen showed Patel commanding the stage, Leavitt shrinking in her chair. Patel paused, letting the applause wash over him, not basking in it, but allowing it to punctuate his point. When the room finally quieted, he leaned back in, softer now, almost intimate, as though he were speaking to each person one-on-one. America's strength is not uniformity, it's diversity. It's the fact that my story, my parents' story, is one of millions. It's different in detail, but the same in essence. Sacrifice, hard work, belief. That is America. And when someone tells me to go back, I don't hear an insult. I hear a challenge. A challenge to remind this country that we do not go back. We move forward together. The words landed like thunder. The crowd rose again, this time in a standing ovation. Chants of USA, USA, began from the back rows, spreading like wildfire until the hall itself felt like it was shaking. Social media feeds lit up in real time, hashtags forming clips, already circulating, hearts and likes flying across screens. Commentators backstage nodded to one another, scribbling notes that would soon become tomorrow's headlines. Leavitt tried to interject, leaning toward her microphone with a forced laugh, but the sound was swallowed whole by the ovation. Her eyes betrayed her frustration. She had delivered her sharpest attack, and instead of a wound, she had carved a stage for Patel to deliver his defining moment. Patel didn't gloat. He didn't smile smugly, simply stood there, composed, waiting for the cheers to subside before he spoke again. I am not here to divide. I am here to remind us of what unites us. We may come from different places. We may look different. We may pray differently, but we are bound by one thing, the belief that this nation is worth serving, worth fighting for, worth protecting. Leavitt's face had gone pale, her usual fire had dimmed into silence. She glanced toward the moderator, as if begging for the next question to cut this moment short. But Patel wasn't finished. So no, I won't go back to India, he said firmly, voice ringing with finality. Because I'm already home. I'm home in the country I have served. I'm home in the country my parents sacrificed everything to give me. And I'm home among the millions of Americans who know that our greatest strength is not where we came from, but what we stand for. The standing ovation turned into thunderous applause, shaking the rafters of the auditorium. Even some who had come to cheer Leavitt now clapped, unable to deny the force of Patel's dignity. The moment had transformed from an exchange of insults to a national reckoning, live and unfiltered. And in that moment, Kash Patel didn't just win the debate. He won the room. He won the story. Won the hearts of countless Americans who saw themselves, their families, and their struggles reflected in his calm defiance. She looked small, overshadowed not by volume, but by dignity. The cameras zoomed in on Patel's face, composed, resolute, unshaken. It was the image that would define the night, the clip that would travel faster than any insult ever could. But the true impact of his words wouldn't be felt until hours later. The debate stage lights dimmed, but the fire Patel had ignited only grew brighter. Within minutes, clips of his response were already flooding social media. The line, "I won't go back to India because I'm already home," became the rallying cry of the night. By the time the candidates had left the stage, hashtags were exploding across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Hashtag go back to dignity. Hashtag Patel for America. Hashtag already home. One viral tweet captured the mood perfectly, Karoline. Tried to shame him. Kash reminded us all what America is supposed to mean. It was retweeted tens of thousands of times in under an hour. TikTok users clipped the exact moment Patel leaned toward the mic, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. Teenagers, veterans, immigrants, even teachers posted reaction videos, many in tears saying, "That's my story too." Memes sprouted like wildfire. On Instagram, artists sketched Patel standing tall with the caption, "Home is here." Others turned Leavitt's insult into a boomerang-style video, her words reversed into oblivion, placed with Patel's quiet, powerful rebuttal. One of the most shared reels had dramatic music swelling behind Patel's speech, making it feel less like a debate clip and more like a movie trailer. Even celebrities weighed in. List actors tweeted their support, calling Patel's line Oscar-worthy. Singers reshared his clip with captions about pride and resilience. A famous NBA player posted, "That's what leadership looks like." And late-night comedians, usually hungry for mockery, instead praised Patel's dignity while lampooning Leavitt's smirk that crumbled on camera. Journalists jumped on the wave too. Headlines the next morning blared, "Patel's poise drowns." Out Leavitt's insult in one line, one moment, a nation reacts. Some conservative outlets tried to downplay it, framing Patel as overly sensitive, but even their comment sections overflowed with viewers who weren't buying it. Inside Karoline Leavitt's camp, panic reigned. Staffers scrambled to draft statements, spinning the insult as taken out of context or a slip of the tongue. But the footage was unedited, raw, impossible to dispute. Every time her team tried to push back, another viral clip buried them deeper. The more they insisted she'd been misunderstood, the more people replayed the moment for clarity. And the clarity was devastating. Meanwhile, Patel's camp didn't have to lift a finger. Support poured in organically. Commentators called it the most powerful debate moment of the year. Rival politicians, even those who disagreed with Patel's policies, praised his composure. A senator tweeted, "Disagree with him all you want, but that was leadership." In living rooms, classrooms, and coffee shops, Americans were talking about it. Teachers shared the clip with students as an example of civility under fire. Immigrant families watched together, parents nodding with pride while their children whispered, "That's us." For many, Patel's response wasn't just about him, it was about their own place in America. It's their own claim to dignity. Leavitt, once the self-styled firebrand, now found herself cast as the villain in a national morality play. Her ambition for a viral moment had succeeded, but not in the way she intended. She had become the face of arrogance undone. Her smirk replayed endlessly as the precursor to her undoing. By midnight, the debate wasn't being remembered for policy arguments or statistics. It was remembered for one insult and one answer that silenced a room and electrified a country. The internet had rendered its verdict before the pundits could even gather at their desks, and no amount of spin could change it, because the genie was out of the bottle. The nation had already chosen a side. In the days that followed, as headlines replayed the moment and social media continued its symphony of applause, Kash Patel was asked again and again about what it felt like to be told on national television to go back. And each time, his response elevated the conversation far above the insult. "This is America," he said firmly. "We don't go back. We go forward." It was more than a rebuttal. It was a redefinition, a reminder that the country's story had never been about retreat or exclusion, but about persistence and progress. Those words, spoken with the same calm dignity he had shown on stage, began to ripple outward, quoted in news articles, etched on protest signs, turned into inspirational graphics online. Patel had reframed the moment into a universal truth, that hate shrinks us, but dignity expands us. That arrogance burns out, but calm endures. He didn't need to insult his opponent. He didn't need to trade venom for venom. Instead, he offered a vision of America that was bigger than both of them, an America where service outweighs slander and where anyone willing to contribute belongs. Audiences who had watched the debate felt the resonance. It wasn't just about Patel's personal story, though it was powerful. It was about what it meant for the countless others who had been told in one way or another that they didn't belong. His words became their shield, their vindication, their anthem. "This country isn't about where you start," Patel continued in interviews. "It's about what you give, what you build, what you defend. My family believed in that promise when they came here. I believe in it every day I serve, I die. No millions of Americans, immigrants or not, feel the same way. This nation belongs to all of us who choose it." The moral crescendo built not through volume, but through clarity. Calm over chaos, service over slander, truth over noise. Patel had turned a moment of ugliness into a testament of strength. showing that sometimes the most devastating answer isn't rage, but restraint, not attack, but affirmation. And it resonated because America itself is always at a crossroads, between the smallness of fear and the vastness of hope, between walls that divide and bridges that endure. Patel's words pointed the way forward, reminding people of the country's best self. "This is America," he repeated. "We don't go back, we go forward." They were simple words, but in them, people heard echoes of generations, immigrants who crossed oceans, soldiers who fought battles, workers who built industries, activists who marched for justice. They heard their own stories reflected, their own struggles honored, their own pride validated. For a nation often consumed by division, the reminder felt like oxygen. It was not about erasing differences, but embracing them as part of the same unfinished symphony. Patel didn't just defend himself on that stage, he defended the idea of America itself. And as audiences replayed the moment, goosebumps returned each time, because deep down people knew the insult had already been forgotten. Be remembered, what would endure was the answer. The lesson was clear and it was timeless. Dignity outlasts hate. Calm steadies chaos. And, in the end, America belongs to all who believe in its promise, all who choose to move forward together. Karoline Leavitt thought she had landed the blow that would define the debate. "Go back to India," she sneered, aiming to reduce a man's life of service to a cheap punchline. But what she never expected was that Kash Patel would transform her insult into a moment of history. He didn't fight fire with fire. He didn't raise his voice or return the venom. Instead, with calm and clarity, he reminded America of a truth too powerful to ignore. This is home. This is America. And we don't go back. We go forward. And in that instant, the story was no longer about Leavitt's insult. It was about Patel's dignity. It was about every immigrant who ever sacrificed for a dream, every family that believed in the promise of this nation, and every American who knows our strength has always come from our diversity. Leavitt wanted a headline. What she created instead was a legend. A single reply that silenced arrogance, uplifted millions, and reminded the country of who we are at our best. If you believe that dignity defeats arrogance, if you believe calm will always outlast chaos, if you believe America belongs to all who choose it, then share this video. Subscribe and join a community that refuses to stay silent when hate tries to speak louder than hope, because in the end, the loudest insult fades, but the calmest truth echoes forever.